So here in Trinidad, Tobago, Guyana, there'll be dead people everywhere. Oh yeah. It's going to shake you up.
How you doing, guys? I always preferred the more outrageous comedies. The more outrageous, the better. To me, if a comedy was a little bit too much like real life, it's like, what was the point? But most sitcoms had something in common. 99% of them had a laugh track or were recorded in front of a studio audience. One thing I found out at a young age was those sitcoms that were shot in front of a studio audience, they would have signs or prompters that would tell the audience when to laugh or when to applaud. And my thing is, if it was funny, why do you have to tell people to laugh? For that matter, for the TV shows that had the laugh tracks, if it wasn't recorded in a studio in front of an audience, why would you need to put in the laughing? Was this to tell the people at home what was funny and what wasn't? This is why they call them television programs, because they program their audience to what's funny and what's not. If you noticed, many TV shows don't age well because what the audience was programmed to think was funny before just isn't funny today. If you watch Archie Bunker today, which at the time, many people found him offensive. Some people found it funny. Today, people are like, what the hell is he talking about? Every decade, it seems like they're throwing different things at the public. This was a tactic that was also used at the Kingdom Hall, especially when people blindly applauded. I mean, every public talk, and not every public speaker was that good. Some of them were pretty damn bad. And let's face it, there's only so many talks to go around, but you could give the same talk and see it again at the same hall, and still what happens? This is basically because Jehovah's Witnesses, when they're sitting there, they're lulled into a trance. This is the same thing at the public talk, the Watchtower study, the midweek meeting, the assemblies. Let's face it, you get a different brother every week from a different congregation. And today, from the Anal Bead South congregation, Brother Myron Woodcock will develop the theme, The Evils of Masturbating to Lesbian Midget Porn. Well, he's got a grace of about 2 minutes. And within that 2 minutes, the congregation is lulled into a trance. They hear him, but they're not picking up everything he's saying consciously. Subconsciously, they're picking up the underlying message. The funny thing is, many in the congregation are lulled into this trance. Some are flat out asleep, but you'll notice one thing. When it comes to following along the scriptures, every JW can open it up almost on a dime to the scripture. Some people just open it up and pretend to read. Now, this will go on for about a half hour. I believe the public talk is still a half hour. About 5 minutes before the end of the talk, most of the congregation is coming out of the trance. Some are still asleep, but they know that the end of the talk is automatically coming. And what happens at the end of his talk? Blindly, they all just start applauding. Like I said, it could be a talk you've heard last week. Like I said, there's only so many talks to go around, but you can have the same talk given by two different guys and it'll make it sound like a totally different talk. But every meeting of Jehovah's Witnesses is like this. Whether it be the midweek meeting or not, they're all in a trance. They're all being programmed. The assemblies and conventions are the same thing on steroids. Let's face it, every talk basically comes down to two subjects, no matter what it is. When you cut through all the smoke and you cut through all the clouds, what are the two major things that every public speaker is talking about? One being the genocide of billions of people. The other being total submission to a real estate corporation. That's what it all comes down to. Let's face it, if you go to a show, you go to a theater or any type of auditorium, about 2.5 hours, you may enjoy the show, but you're ready to go home. When you go to the assemblies or conventions, you're talking 6 or 7 hours, multiple days. Let's face it, after a few hours, everybody's ready to go. And I noticed in the afternoon, especially on the last days, they throw out the messages that they want their audience to pick up on. But by this point, everybody's pretty much half asleep. Oh, just for the hell of it, towards the end, the last few assemblies I went to, I started recording the afternoon sessions. And it was nothing any different than you would have heard at a Kingdom Hall. To be honest, Jehovah's Witnesses think they were getting this massive spiritual banquet. But it was all the same bullshit. Only the assemblies, like I said, it was on steroids. Yet, after every talk, everybody would be blindly applauding. I think you could pretty much talk about anything, especially on the third day of a convention in the afternoon. You could talk about pretty much anything and everybody would just be blindly applauding. You remember the old theocratic ministry school? You know, had they kept it, I may have stayed a little bit longer. I had, when I started studying with Jehovah's Witnesses, one of the guys was not a great reader. As a matter of fact, he was not well educated. He had a learning disability. He was dyslexic. I think he would have struggled through Dick and Jane books. I mean, this was a guy that would open up, read every single word. The bigger the word, the longer it took to sound it out. I started fading and I would make periodical appearances at the meeting. He told me he had the Bible reading that week at the school. Oh, I figured just to give him moral support, I'd show up. I wasn't expecting much. But he was adamant about learning how to read. See, that was one thing. I was always a very good reader. He was terrible. And he was adamant about it. And I give him credit. Now, I went in there and I know he was sweating up there at the platform. And I was sweating right along with him. He started reading, and to my amazement, he was actually very fluent. Now, there was a couple of heavy-duty words coming up, and I got my fingers crossed, and he actually got through the entire talk in under 4 minutes. Well, when he finished, automatically I think that was a hell of a job. That took a lot of effort. I started clapping. Now, when the congregation hears one person clap, they all jump in. I was unaware there was a new rule that people were told not to applaud anybody at the ministry school anymore. And those are the ones that need to be applauded. I was talked to after the meeting, and I was asked why. What's the purpose of not applauding somebody who does a good job? And they're like, well, we don't want it to go to their head. Well, apparently you don't want them to build any confidence either, but Vinny plays by his own rules. But, like I said, if I saw the need, somebody did a job and did a damn good job, I would applaud. But this is something to consider. Any Jehovah's Witnesses that come along this video, think about it. When you're at the meeting, your assemblies, your conventions, all your talks are the same. Listen. Listen with your ears. Don't go to sleep. You may wake up sooner than you realize. Anyways, guys, I will talk to you soon. Feel free to leave a comment below. You have a good day.